Hello. So today I think I'm gonna hop on and work on DocString, which is a linter for docstrings in Swift. So this is where we are right now. I guess I can show you on GitHub. So this is the repository, and I am working towards a release. And one of the things in the release is this item. So I guess like a docstring in Swift looks something like this. You have your function, and then you have a description on top of it. This starts with 3 slashes for each line in the docstring content, and there's a couple of sections. For example, here are some sections. There's a section for parameter. Each parameter has their own docstring. And to use docstring, I guess let me try to compile it first. So docstring is a command line utility that can be run with command line options, or it can read configuration from a TOML file. And and it will find problems of your existing docstrings. So one thing they won't do right now is find places where you're supposed to have docstring but don't. So that's something eventually I want to add. And another thing I want to eventually have is automatically formatting, which is actually not hard to do. It's just a matter of priority. I think for a large software project, just finding inconsistencies or missing items in a docstring is already very useful. So yeah, so this is how you would use it. For example, let's check the file we were looking at before. So if you just type docstring check and give it the included paths, and it will print out problem they found for that particular file. Again, oops. So for that particular file, you can see the docstring command tells us the parameter is missing explanation, and there's a random unrecognized docstring here, and the function throws, yet we don't have a docstring for it, and the documentation for the return type is missing. And this is a regression test, so you can ignore. Anyways, so yeah, this is what it does. You notice that there's an error, like a number in front of it. So that is for in case you need an explanation, you can type explain. Let's say we don't understand what this means, so we can just type 004, and you'll have a little explanation of what this error is all about. And one thing that we still don't have as a functionality, as I alluded to earlier, is this bad parameters keywords. So this is what I'm working towards. So in some version of Xcode, when you ask it to generate docstring for you, it will actually generate formats like this. For if you have multiple parameters, it will first say like, here's a dash parameter, and then below it is the docstring for each parameter, and for them you start with a dash and the parameter name. So the DocString command right now doesn't have ability to actually check errors, especially like white space errors in this line, this very particular line. So this is also a good time to introduce how we do tests in this project. So we use something called file check. File check is a utility that I believe is first introduced in LLVM. So because a compiler is all about transforming one set of strings into another set of strings, so file check actually lets you, basically anticipating that you're going to print out another set of strings, you can just say check and then the expected string, for example, and you associate a check command with this file. So you basically, you can lead your actual content with the check or the test's expectations. So here you can see we're expecting the word parameters should start with exactly one space before dash. So that means essentially there are two spaces here. So we're thinking that's error. And the next text, another example, for example, let's take this one. There should be exactly one space between dash and parameters, right? So there are more than one spaces. We can make it more. Okay, so to connect everything together, we also use XCTest. And the way we use that is essentially we'll add a new test here. You can see the references the file name we just looked at. So what this does, when you run the run test, it runs through a bunch of things, but essentially actually invoke the DocStrings as part of the library, but also use this function. This function is from file check, the Swift version of it, and it does the file check for us. Anyways, so if we run that test, for example, filter, what was it called? Bad parameters keyword, or is it? We'll just copy this. So if I run this test, I don't know if it's going to compile, but you'll see it's failing. And I guess we can run all the tests. I believe that's the only test that's failing right now. Yeah. Yeah. So our goal for this stream is basically make that test pass. And I guess I can also show what is like to actually fail a test. Oh yeah, in this case, file check just tells us the input from the because we didn't find any errors, so we didn't output anything. So it just tells us there's no output. Okay. All right. So kind of the most important thing here is we already have a test we're working towards, but we need to work through some infrastructure before we can actually find the problem. The next thing I want to look at is this thing called DocString here. So in this data structure is the in-memory representation, or the abstract syntax tree, if you will, for DocString. And it, for example, it has all the descriptions, it has for parameters and returns and throws. We really just need to include well, first we need to actually add the parameters keyword as part of the representation, because right now you can see it doesn't really exist. So let's add parameter header. I don't really know. I don't really know what type it should be, because entry is very specific. It has like representation for the space before the dash, the keyword itself. Well, name is like for like a parameter name, for example. And then there's the colon, and then you have to remember what you found in the DrString for the white space before the colon, and then you have the description. But since we're trying to represent just like parameters, literally just all of these, so the element we want is kind of like, okay, we want the white space here. We don't really care about the dash itself. We want to remember the white space here between the dash and the keyword. So that's just literally this type that I made up called text led by white space. And then we kind of want to also find out the white space after the keyword. Okay, so it's like a string, and then a text led by a white space, and then another string, right? White space dash text, the keyword led by white space, and then the rest. All right, so we need this. But having added that, and if I try to compile, I believe we'll have error. I'll just compile it here. We'll get compile errors, which is perfect because it tells us what to do next. Oh, interesting. I guess toggle doesn't automatically conform to equatable. So we could piggyback on this entry. Yeah, I'll just use an entry. And it's going to be optional because not all DrString format have this parameters header. So use the pre-dash white space for the pre-dash dash space. We'll use, I guess, keyword. But keywords is optional, and we really don't want it to be optional. And everything else. It's fine. I'll use keyword because that's what makes most sense from a documentation point of view. All right. So we use the pre-dash white space to remember the pre-dash white space, and we'll use keyword to remember the white space leading to the parameters, the word parameters, and the actual text that's considered as parameters, could be misspelled. And then we use pre-colon white space for the remainder of the white space. Okay. All right, so what happens if we compile now? Initializer doesn't work anymore. We will, I guess, parameter header before parameters makes sense. All right. Okay. All right, so now we're jumping to the parser where we actually create instances of DocString. And this is like a state machine kind of thing. And when we finish the state machine, we actually create an instance of the DocString. All right, so I believe the header is actually considered part of the state. Let me find the definition of the state. So what is the state? The state is a parsing dot state. What is a parsing? Let's find out. So I think it's called decipher. Okay, parsing. All right. Yeah, so we have a grouped parameter start state. So let's just watch for that. So as we're going through a DocString's content, if we're at the start of the start machine and a state machine and we find a grouped header, then we, I guess, start. Grouped parameter start. Okay. Let's look at a few more examples. So if you're in the description, the overall description of the DocString, and then we encounter a parameter header, then we transition to this state, which is the beginning of the description of the grouped parameters, right? So the interesting thing about the grouped parameter header is that it's really, is it ever a real state? It's not a real state, is it? Grouped parameter header. Okay, here if we're inside of a, so one interesting thing about this parsing logic is it has to be sloppy. So it assumes you have errors. So like if things happen out of order in a DocString, it will try to do the best to make sense of it. For example, in the state machine, if we encounter, like if you're already in the middle of parsing a parameter and you suddenly see a grouped parameter text headers, it will interpret it as part of the description of the parameter itself. So what I mean by that is, like, let's say you have a function here, and then you have somewhere in the middle you have food, description of food, and then the next line, I guess this is, if it's correct, it should align like this. The next line somehow you wrote parameters, right? As if like it's the beginning of the parameter section, even though you already have some parameters here. It will take the content of this as part of food's description, right? So even though when it parses the individual line, it finds like a so-called header. So that's the sloppy feature of this parser. All right, so, but our task really is to actually preserve the header line itself, because before we weren't even parsing that. And now our task is find problems within it. So like our parser needs to first find it, remember it, and we need to include it as part of the representation of the whole doc string, and then we can analyze whether it's correct or not in the later stage. All right, so if we just started, we immediately see a header. We transition into the group parameter start. If we in the middle of description, we saw a header. Yes. If we are already in the separate parameter format, which means like you say dash the word parameter and then the name of the parameter, we see a header right there. We go to grouped parameter start. Okay. Yeah, this code is super ancient. When did I write this? Oh, it doesn't really say, because it said, although it claims it's September 2nd, it's not really. I wrote this in January or something, and it was for a different project. It just happens to also parse doc strings into like an AST kind of thing. Except this AST is really AST that preserves all the white space to find whether there's errors in them or not. So my intuition right now is whenever we go to this grouped parameter start state, we should memorize the grouped parameter header. Yeah. That's also interesting because if I remember correctly, group parameter header only gives you sorry, let me think. Group parameter header, oh, it preserves the raw text, and then it gives you this. I wonder, yeah. All right, so what we looked at just now is the entire state machine for transitioning between line to line, from line to line. So now we can look at what happens when we parse individual lines, right? So let's just look at how group parameter header is parsed. So group parameter headers is parsed by this guy. And this guy returns a string, which by documentation is supposed to be the raw content of the line, and then text light over white space. And we trim the doc head, which is the 3 slashes. And or I guess it gives us the pre-dash lead and the line. And then we'll trim the dash with these words, right? We'll trim the dash with these words. Okay, so really, this first parameter is not the raw text. It's actually the pre-dash lead. Okay, I need to update that. Doc string. You know what? Sorry, I'm using some wonky stuff here. Line parsing. All right, where is it? Okay. So I need to update the doc string. Decipher. All right. So this is totally wrong. I might as well just, oh, let's document it. So pre-dash is this parameter. Pre-dash white space. And this then should be the keyword itself. And then there should be post dash, right? So this really should have 3 values. Keyword, post keyword. All right, so let's see if our line parser. Actually, let's design a test. Why not? We have decipher tests, line parsing. Ooh, embarrassing trailing white spaces. Yeah, so we actually have a bunch of tests for grouped parameter header. Group. What? Oh. Grouped parameter header. Yeah, so there's actually a bunch of tests for them. So we can actually observe the behavior for parsing this line actually way better here. So given this is like a pretty standard, well-behaved, most normal value. You'll get the pre-dash is a white space, so that's literally this white space. And then you'll get the space before here, which is this guy, and then the keyword itself, right? So let's pick some other things. So, okay, this is interesting, right? So the white spaces are the same, but here there's a post white space, post parameter white space. And it's included as part of the keyword. Okay. Yeah, as you can see, there's some, speaking of the sloppy parsing, there's some really interesting behavior here. If the word does start, spelling does start with parameters, and then you have some extra letters at the end, we actually, I guess I shouldn't say we, it's just me. I actually preserved the spelling, right? This is some foresight, because I envisioned that, we may want to like be tolerant and tell people, hey, you made a spelling error, and this is a heuristic, the most simplest kind, I guess, to kind of achieve that. And if you don't begin your keyword with literally the spelling parameters, then we'll throw an error, right? So this is our assert nil. And if you don't have a dash, for example, that's also an error. So that's something, you can argue that that's another form of spelling error, and we may want to warn people later, but I think for now, we can skip that. But what's interesting is that we now totally understand what happens when we parse this line. We preserve all the white spaces before the parameter, and then the rest of the word is all preserved. The rest of the line actually is all preserved, including the white space. So what I'm thinking is, well, first of all, we need to include the new white space value here when we parse this line. And we actually worked pretty hard to piece together the rest of the line here. So what this trim dash function does is it takes, it asks you to give you a word by giving it the first letter of it, and then the rest of the word. And the reason for that is like it wants to allow you to spell the first letter upper or lowercase, however you want, which is itself interesting. I think one day we'll have to do that for the rest of the word as well. And then it returns 3 values. It gives you the space, white space before the dash character. It gives you the word itself, which is not really useful, I guess. It gives you, in this case, the word value would be parameters, and then whatever is after the word. So in order to get everything since the word, we actually have to concat them. But now I need additional values from the rest of the word. So I'll just hoist that value up. Let's see. Rest of line. right? So what I really want is to break up rest into maybe I just want to include rest straight up. Because the rest is supposed to be an empty string if everything goes well. And if you include anything else, including some random letters after the word parameters directly and some white space, I mean, that's an error, right? Okay. So maybe the first thing I need to do is update my documentation. Is it here? Post keyword stuff, including random letters. Okay, something like that. Oh, this is actually pretty, well, we'll see. Okay. Oh, wait. Should be part of the tuple. Okay. So now we go back to our parse. Well, this is the line parser. All right. So now we go to the between line parser. I guess we'll try to compile. Make build. We'll let compiler tell us what to do next. Yeah, so whenever we parse the grouped parameter header, now we get 3 things instead of 2 things. Wait, is it? Oh yeah, at least we just updated that. Okay. Post keyword. Now, did we actually update that? Yes. Okay, so we can include the post keyword portion of the word. Now what? Aha, now when we do pattern matching, we have an additional field. So let's ignore that a couple of times. Now after this start to compile, we'll have a couple of additional test failures, which would be great. Wrong length. Where is this? Where is this? Oh, what did I do here? It's like this, right? Oops. We're good, we're good, we're good. All right. Aha. Right, because we added the field here, parameter header, we need to add the description, which is the entry, which could be nil. So let's just put nil here for now. All right. Okay, so this compiles. I don't need to compile the whole thing. Now what I really want is to run the tests. Swift test filter decipher tests. So those parameter tests must be failing now. Yeah. Well, first of all, it doesn't compile. Great. So let's look at those. Is this inline parsing? Okay. I'll run it in Vim. Swift test filter decipher tests. All right, take me there. Yes, of course. All right, let's update these tests. So post keyword, right? We anticipate that to be post keyword to be empty string. Same thing here, really. Is there a faster way to do this? Stop. All right. Okay. Good thing the LSP plugin is working pretty well today. So that's great. Post keyword. Yeah, this happens whenever I use inline auto complete. That's unfortunate. All right. Post keyword. Most of these are boring, and we may need to add some additional test cases here, but we'll see. Post keyword should be empty. I just add them all here. Post keyword. Yeah, this is a better strategy because I can just do this instead of typing them. Okay. Now, less of them will fail. Well, first of all, they'll compile. And then a couple of them will fail. In particular, this one will fail, this one will fail. And I also want to add another one that's kind of the combination of the two. Oh, wait, there's the number 9 here. Oh. Oh, those are the... All right, awkward. Okay, let's just shift the numbers down. So this is 9. This, well, oops. This is 9. This is 10. This is 11. Okay, so the reason I want to add is like I want to combine both misspells and white spaces, right? Oh, it's curious that the keyword actually... Oh, wait, this is not what I thought it does, but I guess it's fine. All right, because before I was thinking this value I would expect it to be like SS space space space, but actually we should anticipate to be just 3 spaces. Okay. All right. Anyways, first of all, we need to run these tests and make sure they compile, and then we expect this one, and this one. So never number 7, 8, and 9 to fail. And the rest should keep working, hopefully. Yeah, compilation errors. Missing argument for parameter head. Oh. Okay. Because there's some whatchamacallit, fixtures here. All right. Is there more fixtures? Oh, there's another one here. Okay. I mean, this one really needs to be nil because again, this is so-called a separated style. So every keyword, every parameter has their own header. Whereas this one is the grouped one that we really are checking for. So here we may need to actually update the test as well. My hesitation is whether we should update it now or later. I'll just update it now. So this is a so-called entry with shapes like this, exactly like this. So we can just copy, join here. Is this a good format? Let's fix the indent. The pre-dash white space here should be 1, because this is like a perfect thingy. The keyword is a text led by white space, and the white space is 1 space, and the actual content for the word is parameters. Right, there's no name. Do I have I wonder if I have a easier way to represent it. Pre-colon white space. This is what I'm going to use for after. Okay, all right. And there's no description, all right? Okay, so this test, parameters header. This test is now complete. Let's see if it compiles. All right, so this message is actually legit. What is wrong? So we have description, parameters header, parameters header, parameters, expected description, parameter header. Okay. All right. I guess I'll do the same thing for the next one. Okay, hopefully the test will finally compile, and then we see the expected line parsing failures. Yeah, this file takes forever to compile. Syntax notes. Maybe I think it's a generated file in Swift syntax. It's probably very large. More compilation error. Parameter missing argument. Oh, there's more places where we create this validator test critiques. Oh, this is okay. So there's a piece of the software is called Validator, which you can kind of infer they actually do the finding the problems in DrString. But it doesn't actually have a lot of tests because we use integration tests for the actual behavior. But there's actually a small piece of it that I think required test, which is how do I describe this? So when you have a function signature, you will have a bunch of parameters in it, and then you have a docstring, and it can have a mismatched amount of descriptions for each parameter. So now the problem is, how do you tell whether some description for some parameter is missing, and then there's a bunch of redundant ones that shouldn't be there, right? So the actual algorithm that I used is the same as like a classic algorithm where you diff 2 files, and the first step you do that in that algorithm is you find a common list, I guess, longest common sequence of the two sequences, and then you go through the first one, the first sequence with the common sequence, and find what's the differences. Basically, so I have some tests. This test is actually exclusively for those little algorithms, for the diff algorithms. Anyways, that's why there's an instance of DrString created in this test. Ooh. Oh hey, the tests are run, and some are failed. Let's see if there's an easier way to look at it. Yep, test group parameter number 7 failed. That's what I would like to see. Test group parameter number 9 failed. Perfect, because we want 7, 8, and 9. Do we have an 8? Do we have an 8? Do we have an 8? That's a lot of output. Normal grouped parameter state failed. Ooh, key? Makes sense. We updated this. We added this. So, all right. So interesting, because number 8 didn't fail. Oh, number 8 shouldn't fail. Why would it? Yeah, so only the ones with a post white spaces like 7 and 9 should fail. Perfect. Okay. Good stuff. So now we need to fix parse grouped parameter header. Oh no, we actually need to fix these tests, right? Because this should be a single space, and this should be however amount of space this has. So let's just add a couple more just to distinguish it visually. All right. So now instead of 3 test failures, we should have only 2. Wait. Oh yeah, of course. The keyword is actually the keyword itself, not the rest of the line anymore. So that's a good catch. This is the stateful parsing failure. This is grouped parameter. Is this the same failure? Yeah. And there's no other failures, right? Should I run the test here again? There's no other failures. There's one failure, which is great because that means we handled the lowest level of parsing, which is line parsing. As far as we're concerned, we're correctly gathering all the information when we go through that line. Now it's just a matter of propagating that information up into the stateful parsing, which will give it preserve all the information into the so-called AST of the docstring, and then we can just pick apart the docstring and say, oh, hey, you have some extra space here, or you misspelled your keyword here, and then we can add that into, and then we can print that out. That's kind of the plan here. Oh, 2 test failures. What? This is a downside of not using Xcode. It's not very visual. It's not easy to see what. Oh yeah, the integration tests. Of course, we haven't. Okay. I'm a big dumb. Okay. All right, so we did a bunch of updates here. It's all good updates. Should I commit them? It's the real question. All right, let's fix this. Let's update the stateful parsing. So through our previous investigation, we kind of decided that whenever we enter this grouped parameter start. Whenever this state is entered, we need to preserve the grouped headers. All right, so this is a strategy. Whenever this happens, we will preserve the grouped headers information and eventually remember it. Whenever, for the rest of the part, when we discover a grouped header, parameter header, we will update accordingly. So for that one case where we're already in a group parameter and we encounter it, before we were taking the text part of it. Now we, for example, need to also get the post keyword. I guess this is really should be called the keyword. And then this is the post keyword white space. We'll just call it post keyword, and we want both. Post keyword. Oh. Whatchamacallit? Text. Should be a text led by white space. Okay. Okay. Keyword dot whatchamacallit? Lead. Okay. And keyword dot text plus post keyword. Wait. This makes me think. We need to test something else here. Hold on. Where were those tests? Okay, I need to add another test here. Our shift is done. Hey, begin bot. Thanks for the raid. 28 people. Wow. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. How's it going? Hope you had a good stream. Yeah, so I'm working on a tool that basically is a linter for Swift functions, DrStrings. Yep. Welcome. Yay, open source. Yeah, I'm kind of start with tests. I have a lot of tests to begin with, and yeah, basically trying to refactor by little by little by updating the tests. Linter is your jam? Yay. Welcome. Hopefully you'll like what I'm doing here. Okay. Where was I? Oh yeah, I was gonna add another test. And awkward part is I numbered these tests because they were originally they were one big test. I broke them up, and instead of like coming up with different names, I just added a bunch of numbers. But I literally just copied this test, I believe. So what I want to test is like, okay, so when I see this, when I parse this line, I break it up to a few parts. I remember this, how many white spaces before the dash. I'll throw away the dash, and then remember the keyword after the dash, including its white space. So that's what this is. And then I'll remember the rest, right? But what I don't remember is what happens if there's extra characters here. I assume it's included. I assume this test will pass like this, right? But let's run it and see what happens. So to run a specific test in Swift, you do something like this. Wow, so many viewers. Thank you. Oh. Okay. Where was this? Oh yeah, of course. I forgot to update. I added this line. I forgot to actually use it. Okay. Okay, that test passed. Great. So now we know that after the keyword, the entire rest of the line is preserved. That's great because that's what I'm going to throw at the user's face to tell them, hey, you have some extra stuff here that's not supposed to be. All right. Okay. So back to the state machine. Okay. Parameter header. It's gonna be one of these. Actually, think. Okay, so whenever we enter this state, we'll take the value from here. Pre-dash keyword, post keyword. Oh, wait, gotta be careful here. Does the CLI support multiple arguments parsing one invocation? Yeah. You know, I can demo. So I have a bunch of tests in here, and I also installed it to my in my own machine. So this is how it works. So it has subcommands. So right now I only have 2. So if I just run like the check, for example, I can include multiple files. Tests. That one. Yeah, actually, yeah, you say you can repeat the I, for example. And then you can also use glob patterns. I guess I'll quote it because my shell may try to interpret the glob pattern. Right, so what this says is like include this file and then this folder, all the Swift files in this folder, right? And then you can add some other options. For example, ignore throws, and this is what you get as output. So because it's like a folder for my test, so it has all kinds of issues as a test. So it's like, oh, this function is missing some docstring for this parameter, has unrecognized docstrings, and there's like white space errors. The return should have one space before the dash. Now it finds a bunch of dash, and it's colored and all that. If it's positional, it could be plugged into a bunch of frameworks pretty easily. Yeah. So I'm actually using entire framework to handle the parameter parsing part. So in Swift, there's a framework called Guaca. Yeah, Guaca. So it's like it takes literally your argv and then it gives you the nicety of, like, for example, if you want to parse an array of things, you can kind of get that repeat pattern, and it will do the right thing for you. And then you can have other kind of options and stuff like that. And like positional or like keyword based arguments. And then what I'm really doing is I have a configuration object here, and it actually is the in-memory representation of all the options the user ever passed. So, so instead of actually parsing this command line argument, you also support you to dump all these options into a configuration file in the TOML format, and then will eventually end up being one of these objects as well. And my actual logic starts by consuming one of the configurations. So that's how. Like, oh yeah, pre-commit. Hey Anthony, I think we work together. Anyways, yeah. I think I'm gonna have to look into supporting, working together with pre-commit. Yeah, I work at. I think I sit very close by you actually. Hello. I didn't recognize that's you until you started talking about pre-commit. Anyways, yeah, I should definitely make this work with pre-commit. I'm actually looking into integrating it into some of our code bases very soon. So, okay, where was I? Oh yeah, I was updating this pattern matching stuff. Yay! Huh? I guess there's no reason to. Well, sometimes you don't really need the patterns. Small world. Yeah, San Francisco is a very small place. Yeah, today I don't have my cam on. That's probably why you. I think you might have recognized me if I do. All right. Wait a minute. This doesn't work because I need to add a bunch of like let keywords, right? Oh, that's why the LSP server has been complaining to me. There we go. Oops. Okay, having created all that, we now can memorize it. So plug it in here. I need to remember all this. Okay. Keyword is a text led by white space. It has. Oh wait, I already have it. Which is keyword name. Oh. And this is the post keyword part. Slightly uncomfortable about the fact that it's named post : white space is not really white space anymore. It was until today, but yeah. Okay, the good thing is I can just, this is the thing about state machine is like, I really should, instead of using explicit state, I could have just used a bunch of functions that, whatever. Like there's a lot of repetition, but it's very simple this way. Like I wrote this code in January and I still understand it. That's a miracle. Python. I didn't know that's part of Twitch. That's pretty awesome. Anthon 63 Python. All right. Okay. Wait. Oh, yeah. Okay. Parameter header. All right. So towards the end, when I actually create the instance of DrString, now I can use the value I've been creating, which is right here. So now that one test that was failing should start to pass, right? Fuck it. I think it was this test. Ooh. Top row pattern has the wrong length. Oh, what? Oh, yeah. Okay. Failed again. Yeah, it's this test. This is really terrible to read. Oops. Okay. Let's figure out what the heck is going on. Uh-huh. Okay, so this is not equal to that. What? It's not much better. I mean, it's kind of scanning this, understanding what's going on. I guess the part we're interested in is the parameter header part, right? So we'll just do this. Okay. Better. What is this? Precolon white space. Hold on. Keyword. It got the colon instead. Grouped parameter header. What? Is this part of the test? Oh, yeah. It has a colon. I somehow forgot about that. Darn. Okay. Now I want to go back and check the line parsing part. Uh. Right. Right. Wait, should it have? Let me think about this. I forgot whether it should have a parameters colon or not. Does anyone in chat know? Any Swift users out there? Like, I think it's Xcode 10. When you ask it to generate a parameter, it does something like this. Let me see. Maybe I can try something. Do I have my thing? Oh, yes. Okay. All right. So let's generate something. Foo bar. So a lot of the reason these formats exist is because of Xcode, right? So because Xcode, it changes, it has this utility to generate things for you, but it changes format. For example, well, this is not really Xcode. This is some other software I wrote a long time ago, years ago. But it does follow the Xcode format. So according to it, it does have a colon at the end. So really, all these tests that I had before are incomplete. Like, that's concerning. Grouped header. I guess I never really paid a lot of attention to this because at work, we don't really use this format. But I assume a lot of communities out there and companies do use this format. So I'm going to include that as part of the test. This also means that there's actually a lot more information and things we can link for. For now, I'm just going to add the colon immediately following it, but really, I should be thinking about also getting the information before the colon, for example. In that sense, yeah. This actually makes me feel better. Because, let's look. Because in this entry definition, we actually presume you have a dash, you have some white space before the dash, you have a keyword, but it's separated by the dash. Well, it's following the dash, but it also has some leading white space. And then you have a name. Name really is optional. Keyword actually also optional, but it's kind of awkward. And then you have a colon. And then after the colon, you have some description. And description can run into the next lines and stuff like that. And for the parameter header, I'm using this entry type, but it's kind of atypical before. But now it's really typical, which is really good. Okay, so let's start over. Let's go back to the line parsing thingy and update this, right? So what we want here is actually extremely similar to, for example, a return. So we want to have a string. We want to have the keyword itself. We want to have the space before colon. We want to have well, I suppose the string after colon, which is supposed to be an empty string. Okay, good. All right, back on track. All right. Okay, so let's build, and we'll let the compiler tell us what we need to update. All right. So we'll ignore here. Actually, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, this actually already led us to what really needs to happen. I really like that. Yeah, basically we need to update this function. Okay. So let's look at how we parse the throw. Do we have a parse throws? Right. Description after dash. Interesting. It parses this dash, this keyword, colon, description. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. So the content here is this parameters colon, right? So we get pre-dash, we get keyword, we get colon, and then the rest. And it's going to be, what do we call it? Description after dash. It's going to take the line, the first letter, and the rest is right here. Okay. So everything is almost ready except for the rest. Wait, what's this? Value of optional blah blah blah. Must be unwrapped or something. Fine. Okay, so this rest thing is a so-called text led by white space, and it has a lead, and then it has the text itself. So in this, like, I guess little library, that's a defined concept, which is usually you care about the white space before your content really starts. That, let's say it's a description of a parameter, then you may want the descriptions of between different parameters to vertically align. That's why the amount of space before the first letter of the content is really important. So this because that concept appears again and again, so I have a type to represent it, which is text led by white space. But here, since we're parsing this thing and the correct content is nothing, so we only need to care about whether after the colon there's anything, right? It's actually very similar to this pre-colon value, which is a type string, but really if everything is correct, it should always be an empty string. Right, so now we're ready to return our value, which is like basically this. Right. Except that this last one is this string we calculated. All right, so what else do we need to update? We need to update these pattern matchings because now they have stuffs. Yeah. We have the keyword, we have pre-colon, we have post-colon. So what do I use to represent post-colon? Maybe this is a little bit of premature optimization on my part. Maybe, just maybe, this is already more ready than I thought it is. What if I just return this whole thing? Right? When I return this whole thing, I'll get pre-colon white space. I'll get the post-colon description, so we'll just call it description. And then we'll just, I guess, need to also update this guy to be like that. I have questions about this, but we'll see how it works out. Okay, here we are back in the pattern matching. We'll just call this description now because it's literally just like a throws keyword. Let's see if it's consistent with other things like throws. Oh, just call it text. All right. Now I can create this in a way more natural way. So name is also still weird, but pre-colon white space have the real value here, which is the pre-colon value. I guess it all comes down to the line parsing again. Hold on. Text led by white space. Text led by white space. Oh, let me just actually read the code. I was guessing it's really awkward. Okay. What did I use? It's like description after dash or something. Yeah, description after dash. Okay, let's read the definition. So we trim the duck set, we get all the things after colon. blah, 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 blah. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Okay, I got it. So in a stateful parsing, all right. First of all, we need to include it in all the pattern matching. All right, for example, here, right? So what we need to do here is to make sure that this text after colon is empty. So lead must be empty and the text itself must be empty. If it is that case, then we just return this. Otherwise, we include it. Right. So this is what needs to be replicated throughout. All right. Let's go to the next one. And copy paste this. Oops. Did I? And there's other occasions where I mismatch this. Yeah. So let's see. This is from a group parameter. We're taking the header as part of the description of this parameter. So we need the keyword. We need the post colon. We need now it's really the pre-colon white space now, and we need the text. Okay. Right. So now we need. Let's see. Pre-dash, right? We basically want to include everything here. So what really needs to happen is we want the white space to be, the leading white space to be the pre-dash white space. And then for the rest, we need to basically reconstruct this line because it's, instead of being a significant divider in the docstring, is actually part of the description, a continuation of a description of a grouped parameter. So we want to, we want to include the keyword here, which is itself is a white space lead content. And then we want the, whatever is before the colon, we want to include the colon itself because we threw it away before. And then we want to include the text, right? So this is the actual content for the text of this line of description. And then we append that. All right. Perfect. I assume there's another occasion of this. Yep. And it was not properly updated before. So we'll take care of that. And probably want to add a test for that as well. Derp. Oh, wow. I really should pay more attention to these error messages because historically, the tooling for Swift has not been that great. So I've learned to just ignore them. I've been trained to just ignore them. But lately, it's actually getting pretty good. Okay, what is this? Where is this? Aha, here's a very similar situation there. All right, I want to basically take both of these lines. Go back to that error. Kind of piece these together. So the first one is throws. The rest is the same. Beautiful. So there must be another one. Okay, anything else? Anything else? Build again. Whoa. It is building. So let's test it. Well, it's building the whole thing, which is going to take a while. Wait. What happened there? Did NeoVim crash? I think NeoVim crashed. It's messed up my buffer too. Look, my blinking cursor is gone. It exited with, oh, okay. This is a new phenomenon with NeoVim that, well, provided I've been using it for a number of years now, but like when I use Vim for like a decade, it never crashed. Meh. Anyways, we don't need no editor to run test. Aha, now there's more things to update in tests. Okay. All right, let's go. Pre-colon. So this is gonna be a little bit repetitive, but let's just do it. Do it smart, you know. Let's do that. Well, actually, I can be smarter. So we want to replace that word. We also want to add a comma. And well, here's the situation. Here's the sitch. Here's the sitch, chat. So we want to replace post keyword with a closing brace. And then we want to replace it with pre-colon, comma, space, post-colon, close print. Whoops. Please, do I need to double quote this? Regular expression plus string escaping funkiness? No. All right, whatever. Maybe I can try this. Hold on. Pre-colon. Not comma. How about that? Pre-colon. I need to learn to spell colon though. Pre-colon, comma, post-colon. Hey, it almost worked. Now it works. Okay, so basically for all of these tests, now I need to also add a test for post-colon content, right? XT cert equal post-colon text led by white space. It's gonna be like this. So this one should just pass. Also this one, 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 this one. This one will fail as of now. So will this one, right? This is what we're anticipating the next time this test compiles and runs. That's the hope. Well, let's say it's like that, right? But also, we probably want to add a couple more tests. Let's add more tests. Let's take the perfect input and do a couple more interesting things with it. So this would be test number 13. And what we're interested in is these pre-colon spaces. Everything else is the same, but pre-colon, we want to make sure we capture whatever the user actually typed so that we can, when we complain, we can, fully contextualize what went wrong. All right. So this should also just pass. So we'll keep an eye on that. All right. Let's run them. File too small. That's a new one. That's a linker error. What? All right. Let's do a full build. It's not a big project. Yeah, link errors are the worst. You're not wrong. And to make it worse, this is not even something that happens consistently. It's just, I don't know what is the condition. Like, there's a ray from the universe that just hit my memory or something, like a bit flip or something. I'm not doing anything different. I just added more files running the same way I've been running them for forever, and it just happens. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's very weird. Build system, I tell you, like, I forgot who said this, but like, every software eventually is a build system. And your Blake Box Burger. Thank you. Oh, yeah, I can show you DrString. Just give me a sec. All right, so yeah, I can I guess give everyone a tour of what I'm working on. So DocString is a pun. It's really it's a linter and formatter for DocString, specifically for Swift code bases, at least for now. So it's a command line utility. I've been developing it for a month at this point. The repository is here, although the documentation is not as good as I would like. So, anyways, it goes into a code, goes into your code and find problems from it. So if I run this command as I ran before, it has some command line options. It will go into this fixture folder and basically fish out all the problems in the Swift documentations. Actually, that's just for demo. This really is the superset of that. You can also do like really like glob pattern. So if you run this, interesting. I think I need to do this instead. So if you run this, we'll go into our files in a pretty fast fashion. This time only takes 3 milliseconds. We'll fish out all the documentation problems, right? For these functions, it's like, oh, there's some white space errors. More white space errors. I think it also tells you, oh, you have, you don't need to document for throw, but you document it anyways and returns. And you're missing documentation for this parameter. You have unrecognized, you have redundant parameter for this. And it prints it out in a nice, beautiful command line interface. It also have a different subcommand, which I took inspiration from Rust compiler, which is the explain command. So if you're not clear on any of these errors, you can ask for explain. For example, let's take example E009, right? You can just like explain 9. It will try to, infer what you want to explain, and it will give you explanation of it. And it has a summary and it has some examples. And what I think is really cool is these explanations actually are generated based on some very, very structured markdown files. So I defined like a strict, kind of markdown files, and they're here in the code base. So as a user, you can just browse it. But also, I also have a script that goes in and parse these markdown files. And when I build the command line tool, I include these explanations here. Actually, that's more or less it. So instead of running it as a command line tool, giving it all these command line parameters, you can also use a TOML config file to give it the same information, and it'll do the same thing. What does it do about referring to self in instance methods? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's not that sophisticated. So, from a more technical level, it's really, how should I say this? So there's Swift syntax and source kit in the Swift world. So those are two pieces of software that Apple has produced, and they give you structured information about your code, right? But one thing they don't do is they don't give you the syntax tree for your DocString. Even though DocString is a highly formatted thing, like everybody actually should format your DocString the exact same way, those tools don't do that. So DocString, this project, is really a library that gives you that level of detail for your DocString. So it actually goes in, parse your DocString as much to its best effort. So that means it has a certain level of tolerance in errors, and then it will give you the structured representation of whatever's in your code base in a DocString, and then you can write some rules to pick the parsed DocString syntax tree really, and see, here are all these problems and you should fix them. And the next natural step, I think I'll include in 1.0, is of course actually format it, right? So you define what your DocString should look like in your code base. Now I'll also format it for you. Obviously, you can't do everything, because yes, you can delete redundant DocStrings, but you can't really generate the missing DocStrings for parameters, for example. But for white space errors and stuff like that. We can easily fix that. In fact, years ago, I wrote an Xcode extension that does exactly that. So I was actually running this earlier in the stream. Full int bar int, right? Let's say this is a thing. So I never open sourced this, but you can actually, this is the Xcode extension. So you can actually go and generate this. Xcode has a built-in functionality just like this, but this one is slightly more sophisticated. For example, if your parameter has different length, it will actually reformat it for you. Let's type in some description. Food description, bar. Let's delete this. Now if I try it again, well, you'll notice that it actually vertical aligned this, right? It can do some more fancy stuff. For example, it can toggle between the two styles. And if your comment, let's just copy something here. I'm not sure how well this will work, but if your comment, for example, runs over your column limit that you defined, and then you run this command again. Oh, whoops, that's the wrong function. It will actually format it such that it will try its best to fit in the column limit while it follows the vertical alignment rule, right? So, again, this is all because the underlying implementation is the same, which is it first actually go in and parse everything into the structured data, and then it will just print out however you want it, right? So this is looking a little funky. I think this is because it's being tricked by this colon, maybe? I'm not sure. But if it's just regular words, it should work better. Let's try again. So if I format again, maybe it's trying to preserve this white space. But yeah, this software I wrote in Swift 2, I think, or 3, and it never released it anywhere. But it's buggy too. Thank you. I like you like that. Yeah. Yeah, it's seems like a great tool to start better documentation practice. Thank you. It's good to hear. Yeah, this is really born out of really real needs, because at work I see a lot of my colleagues spend time telling in code reviews others that there's all these white space errors and you're not really following the format, and it's not really. So there's a couple of aspects of this. It's like spending time on this kind of stuff is high investment with very low rewards, but also in the meantime, I really get how people like consistency. So it's like the people that care about consistency get punished because they spend time telling people do these minute things, and then people that don't care about consistency, it's they don't care. So if you let them get their way, then things just falls apart and you just lose consistency all over. So it's a really tough problem to solve. So I think the first step of solving that problem is you let the robot tell you about this. So you at least and then you let the you let the tool to do that work for you as much as it can, and then you get a little bit better towards this. And then it's a matter of, do people care enough to integrate with this tool? And once you get through that threshold, then the world is a better place. Okay, you're going to go to a concert. All right, see ya. Hope you have fun. Okay, where were we? I was running tests. Let's just run tests again. Okay, the good news is our test ran, compiled and ran. The bad news, it's not really bad news. We're, some of them are supposed to fail. Looks like we broke something. That's okay. That's great because we have tests to work with. Okay, test number 7 and 9 failed. Perfect. Let's actually go right there. Oops. Okay. So as predicted, right? Post colon, the content we see is actually this plus this. Wait, that's number 10. Wait. Did 10 actually fail? Oh yeah, 10 failed. This is not equal to that, and this is not equal to that. Perfect. All right, let's grab this. $109. Oh yeah, of course. Pre-colon, there's nothing, right? Okay, now it passes. I think number 7 and 9 also failed, which is great because pre-colon space, it should be like this. And post-colon, it should have a leading white space and no text, right? So we'll fix that. And then number 9 is very, very similar. Pre-colon, there's nothing. Post-colon, there's a little thing. Like that. Oh, what am I doing? Filter line parsing tests. Does this work? Nice. Yeah, it's pretty weird that when I run the test in Vim, it rebuilds everything, but only once. Let's think. Is it because it's using a different build artifact directory? I don't know. Ooh, what is happening there? What? What is that? It says something. That's so weird. Oh. The operation couldn't be completed. Why? Why? This is pretty strange. You know what? When you don't understand something, do it sometime more. What is this? All right, all right, all right. Let me generate an Xcode project and see if Xcode can tell us something more, right? This is really opaque. I have no idea what's going on. Close. All right, let's not run there. Let's run on my Mac. Let's go. Let's rebuild everything again. Yeah, it's really weird. What's special about test number 4? What is that? Grouped parameter header 4. Grouped parameter header 4. So did something... Oh, did I throw? Oh yeah, because it doesn't have a colon. Uh-huh. That's why. I bet this will fix it. Which is interesting because that means there's another kind of thing we can lint for that I didn't think of. Because I, for some reason, forgot the fact that you need a colon in the parameter. Yeah, okay. Everything is normal now. All right, we'll forget about this. Three failures. Uppercase keyword failed. Oh, passed away. Oh. What? You know what? I want this. Actually, this is so much easier to look at. Parameter format failed. Missing section separator failed. Oh, because these tests have formatting problems of their own that I forgot. Bad param format. There we go. What's the other one? Missing section separator. Missing section separator. Dude, DrString is so hard. Bad parameter keyword. Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I guess Okay, add another test here now. Redundant white space after. Oh, wow. I need to update these now. Let me think about this. Actually, it should really look like anything that's like throw bad returns format, for example. Return. No. Okay, let's look at this. There should be no white space before colon. That is a good error message. For Also interesting, there's no error message for this one. There really should be. Okay. So this test still should fail, but the other two shouldn't now, right? Okay, very good. All right, so for that specific test, we kind of want to add some more cases. So this error should be something like it's misspelled. Do we have a similar error? Misspelled. Bad parameter keyword. Parameters. I guess I never had errors for misspelling. All right, that's fine. Okay. So what have we done? Let's see. State for parsing. So parameter header now is part of DocString, right? It is part of DocString. Decipher. Oh yeah. Oh, very importantly, this test is parsing. Is passing. Yeah. So this is added as part of this patch, and this test was not failing. Test normal grouped parameter state. Yeah, it was not failing. So that's actually good progress. Okay. All right, let's recap a little bit. So we started with a failing test, the one that I was amending a moment ago. Bad parameter keyword, this test. So for this test, we're saying that this line must spelled exactly like this. So if you have white space errors like this, we should tell you about it. You have white space errors like, wait. Oh yeah. This one is like you have white space errors exactly like that one, but you spelled lowercase p with parameters. We should tell you the same message, except the keyword is exact copy of what you wrote, right? So you have white spaces like this. We should tell you about it. You have white spaces errors like this one. We'll tell you about it. And what I'm thinking is there really should be another one. Which is a bunch of other stuff. For parameter, let's see. Should be the last character in the line. Something like that. All right, so I need something like that. Okay. All right, so this is where we started. Like before the stream, I already have these tests. Obvious, and this is some tests for my tool that has not been implemented. So we updated the parser so that when it parses that line, it gets the information, extracts the information about all the white spaces and stuff to actually generate all those things. And then we updated the between line parser that the state machine essentially, such that the correct information when we enters the grouped parameter phase of the parsing, the information from that line is preserved after the state changes, and then we plugged in that result on this line here, so that our quote-unquote AST for the docstring includes that information correctly. So you can probably see from the gutter here that these lines are new. Yeah, so cool. So now we're kind of close to passing these tests, because the next phase is we now have the information in the AST. We just need to basically tell user what's wrong about it. And that's why there's a module called critique. This critique guy, it critiques. Lol. Anyways, pre-dash, we can reuse some of these errors. Pre-dash space, for example. Yeah, we can definitely use this for the pre-dash space error, for example. All right, so let's look at how this works, right? So basically, there's like a bunch of tools that go through the command line or config file, and then we'll call through a bunch of other code. Even essentially, we get to run this code. So this code, it takes the signature of a function. It takes some configuration, some options from the user's preference. And then it also takes the docstring that is found in the code base that's associated with the signature. So that's what I guess the doc lines is. So the doc lines is the raw text for the docstring. And then inside this function, the first thing we do is we parse that so that all stateful parsing from before is really ran by this. And then we'll actually get the docstring. So this docs thing is the type docstring. And then now we have the signature itself in code and the docstring structured data. So now we can compare these two and find all kinds of problems. So we have a function that looks at documentation, descriptions. We have a function that looks at parameters. We have a function that looks at throws and then return types. Right. So this is where all the magic happens. So what I'm thinking is, in the parameter problems, we can add that other things. So this is also the most interesting one because this is where we run the least common sequence and then we do the diff algorithm here. But for our purpose, what we really need is super, shall we say, simplistic, which is we take the docs string, right? And in it is a parameter header that we literally just added on the stream. So if this header exists, then now we can start critiquing it, right? If the header header's pre-dash white space is not a single white space, right? So now we can add a critique for it, and we can use the existing one, which is, I believe, pre-dash space. All right, so the language server here is really helping us a lot. The pre-dash space has two parameters. I believe the first one is the keyword. I guess I'll write keyword equals header dot keyword, just so I don't have to deal with optionality here. So keyword dot text and the actual pre-dash space. Header dot pre-dash white space. So with that one change, I think at least one of these will pass. One of these will pass. One space before dash. Let's test it out, right? Let's delete this. Well, I'm a little concerned about that. Let's at least add them to staging. Stage these. Okay. All right, everything's staged. Now take this away and run that test. Bad parameter keyword format. That's the test. So I anticipate this test to pass because of the last change we just made. It passed. Awesome. Okay, let's get back our progress and continue. We're close to victory here. All right. So we've dealt with the space before the keyword. Now let's deal with, actually, let's see. Oh, everything is still staged. Great. Because I'm preparing for the next similar temporary test run. Actually, let me make it convenient by doing it here. Swift test filter. What is test bad param? Perfect. Okay. So if I run it now, let's it'll build for a while and then it will fail. But the next time, the build will take less time. We will be more agile. All right, so the next thing we need to do is if your dash, between your dash and your keyword, the white space is not exactly one space, we'll complain, right? And when we do complain, we can reuse an existing problem that's being reported before. That's already part of the software. By the way, this is from a third-party library, this ANSI code. I actually submit a patch to fix it. And yeah, I think that happened this morning, so we'll see. All right. Where were we? Okay. So if the keyword, we actually already have the keyword. Keyword's lead is not exactly one white space, one space. Then we'll add a new result, right? It's going to be one of these. Which one though? Space between dash and keyword. Here we go. And let's just just to be safe, I want to look at its definition. Space between dash and keyword. All right, so the first parameter is the keyword, the second parameter is the actual. Okay. Okay. Keyword.text and keyword.lead. All right. Now, let's go back to our tests. So what do we just work at? Parameters should start with exactly one space before dash. So we could have included this one the last time we ran the test, but more interestingly, this one. There should be exactly one space between dash and parameters. So now that should work, right? Again, close this. Stage everything. All right. Exactly one space between dash and okay. Now I'm gonna delete this, save, and run the test. And we're thinking the test should succeed. Yes, it succeeded. All right. Restore our buffer. There should be no white space before colon. All right, let's do that one. Well, before that one though, there's a small details I want to take care of, which is the order for which this problem is reported in relationship to other parameter problems. I believe this one deserves to be ahead of everything else because after all, it's the header for the parameters, all right? Okay, let's do the other one. What is it? It's the space before colon, right? So if the dogs has what does it have? Wait. Header pre-colon white space, perfect, is empty. If it's not empty, then we have a problem. I think I can cheat by looking at when I do this for, I guess this works too. Well, this looks wrong. I'll just write it. Where were we? Find documentation problems, right? I don't know why there's a separate buffer here. Find description problem. No. Find parameters problems. Oh, weird. Jump to definition for some reason opens a new buffer. Okay. So this thing is not empty. We have a problem. And our problem is space before colon. That's our problem. I guess this is the definition for these associated values, but let's look. Actual and name. Actual and name. Interesting. It's flipped. That's disturbing. Actual and name. Keyword and actual. Keyword and actual. It's like before this, everything starts with actual. After this, everything, well, sometimes starts with actual. Okay. Actual space before colon. Space before colon. This is what we're talking about, right? Pre-colon white space. Okay. It must be empty, right? So there should be no white space before colon. Perfect. Let's again stage the changes. We can close this. No space before colon. So we'll delete this or run our test, and it should pass. It did pass. Okay. All right, what is this about? This is about the spelling of the keyword. Okay. Okay, these two are new. These two are new. Let me look at the problems. Is there something about spelling? Nothing. I'll look at something else. Sorry, real quick. Throw, yeah. Oh yeah, so we basically, as long as you begin your keyword correctly, we kind of just let you run with it. That's wrong. However, we don't really have misspelled. We don't really check for that problem right now. That's pretty interesting. Redundant keyword. Redundant keyword. Aha, redundant keyword. Okay. All right, that's different from spelling. Oh, I guess for spelling, we actually use casing. Right? Let's look at how casing is generated. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. This is how we deal with it. Casing. Keyword casing. It's a misnomer. I'll fix that. To do. It's also about spelling of the keywords. Okay. But the good thing is now I can just copy this. Doc parameter format. Wait, something is wrong. Doc parameter format. I don't know why. Okay. Okay. So we take the preference from the first letter. For the first letter, if it's true, then we expect the keyword to be parameters. And what we're looking at is, well, we already have the keyword. So if the keyword dot text doesn't equal that, then we will say keyword casing. Oh, I copied. Didn't copy a good one. I don't care about parameter name because this is not about that. All right. So what's happening here is like I already have a previous linter rules for the spelling and the casing for the first letter of throws and returns in a DocString. Now I'm just reusing the same logic to check for the spelling and and casing for the first letter of parameters. Okay, so that also made me think that there are some error message I should reuse. There should be one, or maybe it's in a different, oh, it's uppercase keyword, right? Perfect. So it's a separate rule, which I think is fine, but bad parameters keyword. So parameters is misspelled as that. Interesting. So will it work? Let's find out. Let's do the same, well, just to be safe, right? Delete all this, run the test. Lol. Hmm. Something weird is happening. I want to actually see the output here. So let's run release debug DocString check bad parameter keyword. Parameter keyword. So So we found problems in F0412. 0412. We didn't find problem in number 3, which definitely should be having problems. First letter upper. First letter lower. Actually, I know what the problem is. The problem is we're combining the casing, preferences for the casing, and the preference for the spelling. So it's using the same rule, which is kind of bad because like if you're telling me you don't care about the casing, I will also ignore your spelling problems, right? Let's see. Yeah, so there's this first letter rule. So this is actually a serious problem. I'm gonna file an issue here. The lint rule for first letter in keyword is coupled with the rule for checking the spell keywords. These should be two separate rules. When error occurs, they should be detected and reported separately. If user does not specify preferences for the first letter, the spelling misspelled keywords should still be detected and reported. Okay. So this is more like a bug. All right. And we'll include it as the release for the next one. File the issue, forget the issue. And for now, we'll just make it work, right? We'll just add our preferences here. So I don't know what the order is, but I assume it's going to be after expect empty. Hopefully, no big deal. Now my concern is there's a test that I need to take out. Specifically, this one. We'll see. Oh. Guess I need to rebuild. Or, you know what? I'm doing something silly here. This is old habit. Like when you build a Swift PM project, when you see people run Swift PM project tests, if you see people going to .build and fetch out the binary and invoke it, those people are old timers. Because the new way to do this, the way the kid's doing it this way is using Swift run, right? Swift run will rebuild the project as needed. And then we just kind of replicate all that. So we check, we include bad param format keyword, and then we'll see what happens, right? So I think now we'll get an additional error here. We did not. We did not get an additional error. Huh. Wait, something's weird. Did I not save this? Why is this syntax error? Yeah. Why is this not? Oh, wait. Of course. First letter upper, something like this. First letter. Damn, I forgot the. I forgot. What is it? Let's see. Uppercase. Yeah, see? Now there's additional error here, which is great. Our test should pass despite it. Despite of it. That's good. And now, importantly, now we pick up this error. Okay, great. Great. So the test will pass now. So after this, we only have one thing left. One little thing. Oh, that's funky. Why is there some missing words and letters here? Multi-thread? It passed. That's the moral of the story. All right. Now let's get back our last test, right? So far, all of these tests have been reusing the same infrastructure, data types, and error messages for those errors found in throws and returns. But the next one, the last one, this one is going to be a treat because it's completely new. For last one in the line. Okay. In the line or on the line? Okay, so so we have this enum that we've been using, which is doc problems. Pretty self-explanatory. Basically, is the data type for each case is a kind of problem that has its own unique outputs. But since we're inventing a new kind of problem, we will add a new entry here essentially. So let's call it redundant redundant text after colon or something like that. Let me think. Should I make it more generic, right? So I could say carve out this and this. Redundant text after character. Let's put after redundant character at end of line. How about that? Okay. So we'll have two pieces of customization point. We'll start with the keyword. Redundant text and then line for keyword. This is not very generic, really. Should the last character of the line for keyword? I don't want to make it prematurely make it too generic. Okay. Redundant text in parameter header. And then we record the keyword. All right. So the great thing about this is we're totally leveraging the type system. So the compiler will tell us exactly what to do next. This is also a very good introduction to basically a piece of the software that we haven't talked about at all during the string, which is the output. So when you let's see, when I run the tool, you see like colorful output, and then there's the option to actually turn it off so that it's just plain text. It also detects when the output standard out is not a terminal, and in that case it will also just output plain text instead of ANSI colors. But all of those needs to be implemented, right? So this is where you will see what you will see next. I guess I can't really show you because like it's not compiling. So let's just do it, right? So the first thing you notice I'm not updating is this weird explainer ID. And this has something to do with the fact that each error is associated with a piece of documentation that's built in the command line tool. So I'm manually maintaining this list. But each of this number comes with a piece of documentation, as you can see here. For example, number 13 has this documentation. Now I'm going to make number 14. I guess I'll just write the whole thing, right? It's going to be under documentation, explainers. The file name is going to be 014.md. Now I go here, I can write it. 014, blah, blah, blah. We need to update this. I guess I'll just do it. Let's look at the example. So the text says this. All right, let's call it redundant text in parameter headers. I forgot what style I use. I think it's not title. It's all uppercase. Maybe not. Okay. All right, so we need to give it 2 empty lines and then start write a short summary of it. So for there should be no text after following the parameter group header, and let's give them an example. In grouped style parameter documentation. Okay. Let's write an example. We'll use the foo_bar example. Foo int bar int. Keep it simple. Start with overall description. Give it a space. Now start the thing. Nothing should be here, right? Foo description of foo bar description of bar. Okay, so the right example, it's just gonna be doop. All right, so this is our documentation. Now if I compile the project, it still won't compile, which is, oh well. Well, the compilation is really slow. I kind of already know what's going to happen, but well, this is a little bit of a bummer. Yeah, so the next piece we need to update is this little module called informant. So what really is, basically the piece of logic that's in charge of formatting output, user readable output. And as you can see, there are 2 of them. One handles the plain text format, the other handles the TTY format, so the colored format. So instead of using some smart library that automatically removes the ANSI colors, I just have totally 2 different formatters. All right, so the one we just added is called redundant something. Redundant text in parameter header. Actually, it's pretty clear if I call it following parameter header, right? Okay, let's update that. Redundant text following all right. We already have an example of this here. Okay. Okay. So this still won't compile until we update the other formatter as well. But this formatter does not use backtick as quotes, all right? It uses colors. So we need to use colors. Color. Is green the right color? I feel like colon is not the, this is not the first time I print out colon. Yeah, green, okay. What about keywords? What's the color for keywords? Keyword, green, perfect. All right, what is this error here? Oh, following, oh, that's not great. Oh, right, all right, all right. Well, I'm not sure why I was expecting the test to pass, because we haven't really implemented it yet, right? All we did is make the thing compile after we added a new error, new type of error. So, but we're really close. We're really close, all right? Yeah. All we need to do is add it here. So the header has the last piece of information, which is description. All right. So if the description is not empty, then we have a problem, right? Our problem is redundant text following parameter header. And the actual header is the text of the keyword. Whew. Feels good, man. Oh, feels good. Oh, feels so good. So let's take a gander. Swift run. Check. Wait. DrString check -i, and our file is bad param keywords, and we want to give it first letter must be upper case. Let's see what we implement today. Took almost entirely 3 hours. I think part of it is because I'm streaming, but also I'm not really super concentrated. Wait through the compilation. I guess I can also show you guys some project management part of this project. So I'm using a GitHub project to manage this release. And before the problem with file today, this is actually the last enhancement we want to do before the 0.2 release. Yeah, so this is what I'm working towards today. So the grouped headers thing was not linted before today, and after this, we are able to find all these amazing problems, right? So we can find that there's redundant, there's extra spaces before the dash character. We can find that, yeah, same problem, and then it has misspelled the casing. And then we found extra redundant white spaces between the dash and parameters. We are able to find unnecessary white spaces before the colon character. We're able to find misspellings of the keyword parameters, and we found that there are unnecessary content on this line. And we've implemented all of this today. Feels good, man. All right, let's write a good commit message. Implement lint rule for group parameter header. Parameter group header. Something like that. A header is dispatch lints white space errors, redundant content, and misspellings of it. I guess we can also do some project management here. This is number 29. I think before this, I need to also do another thing, which is so we wrote that little markdown file. Now we need to make it part of the source file. So we do make generate or something, generate explainers. Yeah, we also need to update the Linux test manifests. So generate Linux manifest. I think generate covers both target, but it's cool to show you guys this, I guess. All right. As you can see, a bunch of changes happened. So let's take a gander. Because I updated some of the plumbing of the project, so the decipher test got some new tests. We got a new specific integration test for new functionalities, and then our generated files got updated with a value. This is a dictionary, and this is the key. So before this point, if I write like a Swift test explain 14, I actually don't know what will happen. I think it may crash or something. But now, whoops. Explain Swift.string. What? Swift text.string. It's not explain? Oh, Swift run. I'm tired. So before the generation command, I'm not sure what will happen when we run this. It's definitely not this, but now you can see this will be no times following the example we just wrote in the markdown file. Now is also part of the command line tool. So in the future, I want to actually be able to somehow like colorize these. I believe I forgot which tool, but there are ways to use syntax highlighting in command line. I'm so tired right now. I can't think of which tool is using that, but there's definitely ways. I believe it's not in Swift though, so there's maybe some infrastructural work needs to be done before I can do this. Anyways, so we need to include these changes as well. Okay. Param keyword. I believe I already pushed this before, so I'm just gonna force push now. And we're gonna make a new pull request. Look at this, 258 additions, 19 files. We did this in 3 hours. Yay! So I guess this is also something I can show you, which is the continuous integration. Whenever you make a commit or a pull request, a bunch of GitHub actions get kicked off. And the action for push and pull request are actually the same, so we only need to look at one of them. On the Mac, we will check out the code changes. We will make the virtual machine select the correct Xcode version, and then we will build a project, right? We build the project with Swift PM, and then we go ahead and run all the tests. But that's not the end of the story. After that, we will run tests for generated artifacts. So as you guys just saw, I actually have steps that takes markdown files and translate it into as a output of a command. There's also command to update the Linux test manifests, which unfortunately can only be run on Mac OS. So I have a step that tests that basically run those commands and then use git diff to detect did the command make any changes. If after running those commands, git diff pick up some changes, then that's bad, and that should be considered a failure, right? That ensures that I run all the changes locally. So that's the test on Mac. And then there's also a test on Linux. Very similarly, we check out the code, we build the code, and we run test. But the code is actually built in a container, which is not, interestingly enough, the default, so GitHub Action allows you to specify a Docker Hub image to use to run all the actions, any actions on, but I'm not using that. I'm actually running Docker separately on an Ubuntu image inside. This is because I want to be able to run those same tests in the same container on a Mac, right? So if I simply rely on GitHub to set up the right environment, then I can't basically. And if I want to run those tests in that specific environment, I have to set it up again on the Mac. So why do that? So I just use the same script that basically invokes Docker, and Docker takes the same input on Mac and Linux, and then it actually get the right image from Docker Hub, which is a Swift 5.1 image, and then run the same test. Build the project and run the tests. So tests are constantly being run on both Mac and Linux. And I really hope they pass here and we can close this task. And we'll find some time to work on this bug. And then we just write some docs. And then we release it via Homebrew. Yeah. Oh, I mean, sure. Oh, everything works on the Mac. We built on the Linux container at least. Good, good, good. How's everybody in chat doing? Do you have a good Saturday? I've been figuring out my stream setup lately. Just tried out Elgato's new OBS link, which is a software that makes Mac interactable with any Elgato like sources. So before, essentially, you can't use Elgato on a Mac, but now you can through Elgato through this new piece of software, you can use their video capture card to capture any HDMI sources and use a Mac to stream it. So my setup right now is I'm working on iMac, and the iMac is set up as an Elgato source, and then on a MacBook, I have OBS and the new software that I talked about, and then the software is picking up the HDMI output from the Mac. I'm not sure it's HDMI. It's probably not HDMI, but it's picking up the iMac's screen and streaming it to Twitch, and also separately, my microphone is actually plugged in on the streaming Mac. So what you see and what you hear are from a different Macs. So what you see is from my iMac, and what you hear is a microphone plugged in the streaming Mac. So I have to actually sync up the speech so that when I do something, like I don't have a camera today, sorry, but when I do something, like you guys can like kind of the sound you hear, for example, me typing happens within the same moment of it changing on your screen. So I have to add some delay to the microphone to make that work. Anyways, well, our test passed. So yeah, so we can merge this, and that will close the issue. Yay! What a beautiful moment. Let me just delete that branch now. See ya. Do I have other branches? Oh, I have a lot of branches. I should delete all of them. Docker, explain, GCD, overview, sections, simplify. Yeah. Okay, chat. I'm gonna take a break. I may work on this some more tonight. May or may not stream it though. Thanks very much for watching. Thank. I think I owe BeginBot a big gratitude for hosting. I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you next time. Goodbye.